Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So tonight I want to take a quick look at a story that broke maybe a couple of weeks ago. Um, it's intriguing because once again, it has something to do with a flight or an airport, an airline, or something to that effect. Just having to do with flights, right? I did a video maybe a couple of weeks ago, I would say, and this involved a Black Brazilian woman who felt like she was basically removed from a flight, all because of a dispute over where she could place a laptop that was contained in her backpack. So even though the other passengers, they think that she was treated wrong, they still removed her from the flight. I mean, it was something so simple that could have been resolved. I mean, it was like the other passengers on this flight were actually, they were actually trying to help her out. Like, they were trying to make a space for her so that, they could avoid some of the confusion that was going on. A lot of people saw it as, well, they're just doing this to her because she's Black. She pleaded her case. A journalist on the plane, recorded the video, and next thing you know, it was headlines. So, why I'm bringing this out is that when you have a society that has race issues, racial confusion and accusations of racism are going to just pop up wherever it is. It doesn't matter where the incident happens. If it's a racist society, then racist things are going to happen wherever they happen, right? Um, Before I even get into today's article, this is something that's just like an occurrence that happens. I mean, I'm not saying it's something that happens every day, but I've spoken to a number of African Americans who've traveled to Brazil, and they talk about some of their experiences being on a plane where they're being tended to by what we'll say the Brazilian flight attendants, right? It's not something that, we hear in the news every day, but there's enough stories that, like I said, I've covered a number of stories here. And the point here is, as I've detailed my own experiences where I've said that in the first 6, 7, 8 years in which I was flying to Brazil, I just never saw Black Brazilians on an international flight. Not only did I not see them on an international flight, but I would see an extreme minimum of them when they were flying domestic flights just from one city in Brazil to another Brazilian city, but definitely on the flights overseas. Um, in my experiences with what we could say a Brazilian community in southeastern Michigan, I can say that there's been, out of the numerous families that I've come to know, there are only a handful. I could say, I don't know, maybe three or four Black Brazilians that I've met, one being clearly brown skinned, the other two or three being more on the fair skin side. Now, and when I talked about this in a previous video about this situation that happened with this Black woman on a domestic flight in Brazil, my point was that obviously you're not going to see a lot of Black Brazilians on flights if they don't have the economic wherewithal to be able to afford to be flying somewhere. Now, this has increased, over time, but still, when you get on a flight in Brazil, flying throughout the country, or in an international flight from the U.S. to Brazil or vice versa, you're just not going to see very many Black Brazilians. Uh, there's been stories. A friend of mine told me this happened to him. Uh, a popular Afro-Brazilian lawyer spoke about whenever he flies in Brazil, people, the flight attendants automatically speak to him in English because they assume if he's a Black man on the flight, he cannot be a Brazilian man. Um, just if I was to do some digging, I could find probably several denouncements of how people feel like they're treated when they're in airports, on planes, or whatever. Just a couple. It might be from the flight attendants, it might be from the passengers. But this is what I'm saying about this idea of race and place in Brazil, something that I often talk about. Like, you're Black, you're not supposed to be here. You're Black, you're not supposed to be on a plane. You're not supposed to be driving a nice car. You're not supposed to be in a fancy sports club. It's just in the psyche, a lot of people, because of the association with slavery, 350 years of slavery in Brazil, people still to this day believe that, well, black people aren't supposed to be here. This is supposed to be a very elite section, area, or whatever, club. Like, what are they doing here? Now, let me make very clear, because I don't want people to come to this conclusion that I'm saying that every single person in Brazil is a racist. I'm not saying that at all. There have been, just in my experience, I can't ever say honestly that I've ever felt something, an ill treatment, because I felt like, well, they're treating me this because of my skin color. I can honestly say personally, I've never felt that. But I'm the type of person, when I see other people who look like me experience this, I mean, that applies to myself as well. Their experiences become my experiences. That's just kind of how I see it. Um, so let me just talk about a couple of these previous articles that have to do with flights and racist treatment, racist thought. This is an article from 2015. It says racism at 30,000 feet. Members of a youth group targets of racist comments on a flight. Airline employees interrogate group after they protest. So this was a group of young Afro-Brazilian, I think they were students. And one of them managed to intercept some of the messages that were being traded by some of the passengers on the plane. And they were just like, let me see if I can find some of these comments. Okay, listen to this right here. He says that, once they started selling tickets at Casas Bahia, which is a popular department store throughout the country, he says it's becoming style to fly a plane. Um, then he sends a message. Let me see. The same man in a second message to a friend wrote, asked to switch places to the little ugly one over there, and he was referring to one of the black students on the plane. So after they figured out what was going on and these discriminatory messages were going on, around among the white passengers on the plane, the black student group, they decided to stand up and just like make a protest right there on the plane. And the flight attendants got pretty hostile with them. Nobody got hostile with the group that was sending around the text messages. And maybe people would say that, maybe they took this, out of, maybe they just, they escalated this where it wasn't necessary. But even if they weren't to do that, even if they didn't, have such a protest on the plane, the point is there's still a lot of people who are uncomfortable with seeing people who are not clearly white on a flight, right? This applies to this guy, Renee Silva. I met him, I think, about 2014 in Rio. Very influential social influencer. He had a community newspaper in Rio, and he's blown up over the years. And then he detailed, let me see here. Upon boarding his flight, he heard a woman making a comment that seemed to express her displeasure with the presence of Silva. According to Silva, the woman said to the following to a friend nearby. She says, Brazil is really a mess because in the old days, this, meaning plane flights, was something for the chic people. And nowadays, anyone is flying. Pointing her eyes to her neighbor's nice armchair, or, his seat, she continued, look at the kind of people who fly, referring to Silva. Okay, so this is Renee Silva. This is a guy I was just talking about. So he overheard people talking about him in this way, like they were clearly uncomfortable. Like, what's this guy doing on the plane? It used to be just chic people. So obviously they're talking about, as I said, there seems to be this cliquish elitism where, oh, he's black, he doesn't belong here with us. So many examples I've heard of this. When people go to a nice house and they see a black woman answer the door, they automatically assume she can't be the owner of the house. She must be the maid. So this is what I'm saying about the connection between brown, black skin and poverty. And again, I'm not saying all white Brazilians feel this way, but when you hear this enough every day, you can say there's a large parcel of the population that still feels this way. 2016, actor Érico Braz and his wife were kicked off a flight for being a quote unquote threat to security. They accused the company of racism. Other passengers supported the couple. So Érico Braz and his wife, Kenya Maria. He's a popular, we'll say, B-list actor. And his wife does a little bit of everything from what I understand. I know they had separated for a while, Not sure if they're still married today, but this is an incident where they got forced off of a plane. So this isn't something that's just oh, it's a once in a while. It's this is a an isolated incident. Like, no, I can speak to a situation like this because I don't know if I've ever shared this story online, but I think in about 2002, I think I had made 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. I had made like 4 or 5 trips to Brazil at that point, and I got stopped in Chicago on my way back from Sao Paulo, and I almost missed my flight because the woman who was checking my bags and asking me questions and looking at my passport, she was just convinced that I was doing something illegal. First question out of her mouth, like, well, why you keep coming? Why you keep going to Brazil? I'm like, because I want to go to Brazil. Is there a problem with that? I mean, this woman, she asked me about 20 questions. She would ask me 5 questions and she would go to the back room and come back, ask me another 5 questions. I responded to those questions. She'll go back and come back 2 minutes later and ask me 5 more questions. She opened up all of my suitcases. I had bought a bunch of albums, used albums in Brazil. She opened up all the covers, pulled all the albums out of the jackets. She was determined to find something, right? I'm like, okay, so am I smuggling that white powder in the album jackets? Really? It infuriated me because there was a white couple that went past me, and I swear they had one of those big carts where you have to, if you got more than a couple bags and you get one of those huge like U-shaped carts that you can take several bags with you. They just went flying by from me because they were behind me, and they checked into another person, and they just, while I was stuck there answering all these ridiculous questions, they just flew past me like it was nothing. By the time I got out of the gate or to the gate for my connection back to Michigan, the lady who was at the desk at that gate called me by name, says, "Are you Marcus? You need to get on the plane. They're about to shut the doors. You're about to miss your flight." And I'm like, that's because that lady held me up for like 20, 25 minutes asking me stupid questions. So I'm familiar with how it feels to go through something where you feel like you're being interrogated. And it's like, what other issue is there with why you're asking me all these ridiculous questions? Every time I think about that incident, I think about this song by Mos Def called, we'll say, Mr. Ninja. If none of you've heard that song, you should check it out, because if you've been through this type of situation, you can totally identify with what he's rapping about in that song. So anyway, let me get into this article. And the question here is, the issue with declaring racism for something is not the fact that it's always 100% true that an incident can be racist. It's just the very fact that being a person who is non-white, you're just never sure if the way somebody is treating you or the hostility you receive or the jokes or whatever it might be, you're never sure if is this a black thing. And I'm not one to say every single case that ever comes out is going to be classified as or should be classified as racism. Sometimes it's not, but it's the problem that people who are not black will never have to deal with something like that. So you never even have to question, oh, well, they stopped me because I was whatever color you might be. That's just how I feel about it. It's like it's always that something in the back of your mind. Did they stop me because anyway, let me get into this. Let me just keep going on with this video. So, ignorant racist black congressman was searched by the federal police during a flight in southern Brazil. So this is a Congressman Renato Freitas. He's a congressman. He was searched by the federal police during a flight in the southern state of Paraná. Again, I always say, Paraná is one of 3 states in southern Brazil. Paraná, you got Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. And these are the states that are most considered, 80% of the population considers themselves white in these 3 states. Again, I have to always stress, this is what they consider the European section of Brazil because of the high percentage of German, Italian, Polish, all sorts of immigrants from Europe. Okay. So this is where this incident happened in this red state right here. Of course, this is all of Brazil, but this red state is the state of Paraná. Been there one time. So anyway, this is Renato Freitas. Okay. He's the guy who felt like he was discriminated against on a flight. And I said, this happened shortly after the previous incident that I just told you about, where a woman was removed from a plane. So this happened shortly afterward. So State Congressman Renato Freitas, he's petista, as they would call him. He's affiliated with the Workers' Party in Brazil, the Partido dos Trabalhadores, as it's called in Portuguese, the Workers' Party. It's a leftist party. So Renato Freitas claimed to have been a victim of an episode of racism during an Azul flight, Azul being an popular airline, while he was passing through the Foz do Iguaçu airport in the west region of the Paraná state, headed to the city of Londrina in the same state. He was approached by the federal police after boarding the aircraft shortly before takeoff. The case happened on Wednesday night, May 10th, and was published on the Congressman's social networks at about 7:13 p.m. A video recorded on May 3rd and published on the Congressman's own social networks shows Freitas exiting the aircraft and then being inspected along with his baggage. So, in this first, he was videotaping the whole thing. So he started off from the back and he made his way up to the front where he was patted down, by, obviously the security. You see them going through his baggage. At the beginning of the video, Freitas heads to the entrance of the aircraft where the federal police officer asks him to identify himself and explains that he was chosen for a random search. The congressman, they're called deputados in Brazil, he was a former city councilman in the city of Curitiba, and he is black. Okay, he's on the fair skin side, but he has a large afro. In the video, one of the federal police officers claims that the procedure is random and defined by the system. The One of the officers says, when the system asks you to do it, it has to be done on the person's backpack and on the person. This is done all day here, says one of the officers. So this is just kind of like a meme, just talking about the incident. It says at the top here, we will not shut up. We won't remain quiet. Racism is a crime. Renato Freitas, a state congressman from the Workers' Party, who is black, he suffers a random search inside of an airplane. At the end of the inspection, already returning to the aircraft, the congressman refers to the agents as, quote, a bunch of ignorant racists, and says he was humiliated as he was the only passenger taken off the flight for the inspection. Then an employee searches Freitas' backpack, removing his belongings, and then does a body search of the congressman. In the end, the federal police agent ends the search and returns an item to the congressman, who returns to his seat. Bunch of ignorant racists, Freitas says. A passenger asked him if everything is fine, and he replied, apart from the fact of being humiliated, how many people on that flight were escorted by the police to be searched? Azul Airlines was contacted for comment for this report, but said it would not comment on the case and sought for comment. The federal police didn't follow up on any of the questions. Freitas was a candidate for state deputy last year after having his term as councilor of the city of Curitiba revoked in August. The mandate was reinstated the following month by decision of a federal Supreme Court judge. Freitas faced impeachment proceedings at the Ethics Council of the Chamber on charges of breach of decorum for holding a protest at the Nossa Senhora do Rosário dos Pretos Church in the capital of Paraná State. The demonstration that he participated in was against the murder of the Congolese immigrant Moise Kabagambi, beaten by a group of men at a Rio kiosk. It's something I have to cover. That story happened over a year ago. It was just really ugly. I remember when it went down, like these 3 or 4 guys, just this Congolese immigrant. There's a lot of African immigrants in Brazil these days, and he was demanding payment. He had been working for these vendors for a few days, and he hadn't received his payment. And when he demanded to get paid, they assaulted him. They beat him up with, sticks and baseball bat, and he ended up dying. But I don't want to get too far off into that. I will have to cover that story one day. But a lot of black immigrants from other countries have complained about how they're treated in Brazil, whether they be from the African continent or Haiti. Again, I can't complain personally that I've ever felt that way. But this can't dismiss how other non-Brazilian black people feel that they are treated in Brazil from time to time. In a statement, the federal police said that on May 3rd, it was called to assist a civil aviation security agent in the inspection of a passenger who reportedly refused to submit to additional security measures at the airport. What they're saying is that he refused to go through the procedure at the indicated location and went directly to the aircraft. In this way, the airport inspection team called the federal police to follow him to the plane and carry out the due inspection. The federal police clarifies that all procedures were carried out in accordance with the resolution of the National Civil Aviation Agency, or ANAC. It also emphasizes that any abuses or failures in the conduct of the procedure will be investigated. This is what the note read. The normative to which the federal police refers is Resolution 515 of May 8th, 2019, which provides for civil aviation inspection procedures against acts of unlawful interference at airports. Randomly and whenever deemed necessary, passengers must undergo additional security measures, which may include personal search, manual inspection of hand luggage, and the use of explosive trace detectors and other security equipment. In response to the federal police's version, the Congressman Renato Freitas, again, the guy at the center of this, his camp informed that at no time was there any refusal for the inspection. According to the report, he complied with the standard procedure of going through the metal detector and his belongings through the baggage scanner, just like the other passengers did. Later, however, a civil aviation protection agent intercepted him, saying that in addition to passing through the devices, he would have to be drawn or selected for a thorough inspection, the statement read. According to the congressman, there was no visual signaling, whistling, or any note of this random inspection. Freitas responded promptly without any resistance. Due to the boarding being closed, the congressman asked the employee to warn the airline that he would get there soon so that he didn't miss the flight. In response, the employee said she could not honor the request and she left, the report states. The congressman remained in the x-ray area awaiting referral by the agent while reaffirming that they could continue with the search on him and his belongings. So he's saying here that he complied with whatever extra security measures that they felt like they need to, run him through. As there was no interest in the search from the employees who were there, Renato went to the plane where minutes later he was surprised by the federal police, accompanied precisely by one of the employees who had already refused to do the search in the baggage scanner. The employee even admitted before the federal police and the recording that Freitas made by cell phone that the congressman had allowed the search at the time of the boarding, he adds. So this is what Freitas is saying. What they're talking about is a contradiction because, the security agents themselves basically acknowledged, like, yeah, he did comply. So then why is he being put through all of this to get on a plane? Oh, let me see here. For the congressman, the information disclosed by the federal police is a contradiction. The congressman never refused to go through the search, although it is at least strange that he was the only one, quote unquote, chosen for such a procedure during boarding. At all times, Freitas was willing to follow all employee guidelines, as the videos demonstrate. In addition, the note also does not mention the airport security cameras, which could clarify the case. The congressman requested an investigation of the case and considers the greatest responsibility for the embarrassment experienced by the congressman is not the federal police, but the civil aviation protection agents who called the police. They should be held responsible for, even without any evidence, having seen Renato as a potential criminal, in addition to not having followed the procedures to which the congressman did not refuse, assesses the congressman's counsel. Finally, he requested that the footage from the airport's internal monitoring circuit be made available to the public to clarify any doubts about the episode. According to the Agência Brasil website, they again sought the federal police, which reaffirmed the content of the initial note on the case. The report also contacted ANAC, again, the Civil Aviation Protection Agents, and they're awaiting for a response. In a statement, CCR Aeroportos, the company that manages Foz do Iguaçu Airport, says that the video of the congressman is a questioning of the approach of the federal police agents, and the federal police has already expressed itself on the subject. So anyway, that's just a quick article I wanted to put out here, a quick video to show that, okay, again, can we say for absolute certainty, let's just pick the black guy. Let's pick him for a random search, or he was actually chosen just totally at random. The point is, as these type of ideas about black people go on all the time in Brazil, we'll never know for sure. And I'm willing to, assume that you can never know for sure. But this just the very fact that so many people go through this every day is what makes people so paranoid about when things like this happen. Like, okay, if I was just a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, would they have picked me for a quote unquote random search? Again, we don't know. Can't say for sure. But this is the problem when you live in a society that does treat people different according to their phenotype, their skin color, and hair texture. Okay. So, anyway, what did you think about this article? Definitely consider dropping a comment in the comment section. Share this video, like this video, click on that notification bell so that you'll be one of the people that is notified when I drop a new video. And with that said, I'm going to end the video here and invite you all to come check out the next video.